Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-founder of Seeds of Tao, alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs as we like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we're doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful regenerative business economies ecosystem, aka Regen B, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Hello and welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. My name is Joshua Prieto and I am the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast. Noam Rifkin, my other co-partner in this podcast, is out on vacation for the next couple of weeks. So I'll be going at it alone for a little bit as we dive in and pull out some old conversations that have been aging for a little bit. Like a fine wine, these conversations have been accumulating, and we're going to be focusing this month on the land and nature stewardship realm of the permaculture flower, and really trying to figure out and understand the narratives that are existing in these land and nature stewardship businesses and the entrepreneurs working on them. And so we'll be telling some regenerative business stories. Our first this month is going to be Sam Ingersoll, and we did this podcast a while back. He's actually changed positions and has started a new role in a different business, but he's been doing some amazing things in this land and nature stewardship realm as an advocate for regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming, regenerative dairy industry. He's really been a strong voice in this space, and specifically for some of the dairy industry. He's had a long-standing and a long work to really understand and help others to understand what it means to be building soil and creating healthy cattle, healthy food products. So Colonna Supernatural and the organic brand that surrounds that, Open Gates Group, who's a group of businesses that are family owned, farmers, creamery, organics brands, farms, logistics company, just this really big umbrella of dairy products and organic food products, really has been a voice for that brand. And then moving into his new role at Hungry World Farm, he's been working to build out this regenerative focused retreat and farm that's doing all sorts of really great things. And I haven't really had a chance to chat with him more on his new role that he's had for just over almost a year and a half now. But we had a great conversation in this interview, and we got to chat more about his endeavors to build out a family organic food brand, and to do so with the regenerative framing and understanding. And so we'll dive into his story, get an understanding of what he's working on or has been working on in his career and how he got started into it. And then we'll explore this month other entrepreneurs in this space that are in this land and nature stewardship realm doing really interesting work. And let's see if we can, as we do so, build out a greater understanding of the narrative. At the end of this month or the beginning of next month, we do our think tank. And at the think tank, we'll focus in on this specific realm of the permaculture flower, the land and nature stewardship, and really start to see what ways we can come together as a collective ecosystem to start building out the narratives for this area in a collective way and do it as a collaborative whole. And that's really what the regenerative business economics ecosystem is. Regen B is really trying to build out with the association. So we are seeing lots of these narratives being formed. There's this narratives around soil, which is great. We're seeing Common Ground and Kiss the Ground doing some great things with the documentaries that they've been creating. There's lots of narrative to be found and done in the watershed protection work. Water Unity Network. Elise is doing some great work to build out some great understanding on how we organize around water, which is another narrative I think that is so needed, and probably the bigger narrative, even more than soil, even more than definitely carbon, right? But then there's the carbon narrative, right? And how is that distracting or building for our land and nature stewardship objectives in regeneration? And is there better narratives, or are there more cohesive narratives that actually bring the ecosystem together as a whole? I'm betting that water is probably the best narrative that we can all get behind, because everybody needs water. We all need water. We all need to protect our watersheds. And there is so much not being done in this realm. It's like we're overlooking that water is the source of everything, right? And so I'm betting that narrative is going to move us towards there. Listen to these next few podcasts, but be open in the idea of what is our shared narrative? What can we collectively build together in the form of media that is moving this needle forward? Our first project as a regenerative business economics ecosystem and association for that ecosystem is to build out a media alliance. And a part of that is getting down these narratives that we need to move forward and build campaigns around them. So be thinking about that. Let's dive into the Sam's interview right now. Thanks for joining us. Here we go. I have Sam Ingersoll with us. Am I pronouncing the last name right, Sam?
You are. Yes,
okay.
You are. Thank you.
I did all right. Sometimes I feel like I could never get a name right. But thanks for joining us today. How are you?
Good, thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. And remind us just where you're at in time and place right now, and tell us a bit how your day went today.
Sure. Well, I'm in eastern Iowa, just outside of Iowa City, in a small town called Kelowna. Kelowna is probably the largest concentration of Amish farms and organic dairy farms in the United States per square mile. There's only a couple thousand people in the town. We're about 3.5 hours east of Chicago. And unlike much of Iowa, it's not corn and beans. There are corn and beans, but we have lots of, we call it ecological oases. Been working with the dairy farmers that we do who are practicing organic and regenerative farming methods.
So there's a lot of Amish influence in the farming as well in this area.
Yes,
that you're in.
Some of the farms here have been around for 150 years and were untouched by herbicides and pesticides long before there was any government certification for it.
Wow. I mean, that kind of speaks for itself, right? You kind of found a really cool niche area that you could actually apply a lot of the stuff that we are hoping for today in across the industry in dairy and agriculture in general.
working in this kind of community brings some peace from, most of our normal daily stress and of electronics and phones. We're on electronics now, but all I have to do is step outside the door and it gets pretty quiet.
Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So sounds like a beautiful area that you're in. Tell us a bit about your day. What got you up this morning?
Well, I was tired actually. We have a 25-year-old with Down syndrome who likes to stay up all night playing and vacuuming the floor. And I got a 5-year-old that fell out of bed and conked himself. So I was up very, very early. I typically don't get up that early, although when I do, my drive to work here is down a 2-lane road, and I get to see cows and the trees and grass, which I didn't get to for most of my life when I got older.
Yeah. So, and we have 4 young ones ourselves, so that often keeps us up at night or shortens our time for sleep. So totally understand that. What's tell us about a little bit more about the work that you're doing and what gets you excited to do the work that you do?
Yeah, well, I'm a consumer advocate by heart. I spent many years doing nonprofit work. I spent years doing financial services and real estate consulting, industries that I didn't think were in the best interests of most people. And when I got to Iowa, I decided to look around for a job, and I discovered this really innovative organic dairy company that was helping people with their health journeys. It was doing a lot of things for small farms and rural communities, which is where I grew up. And then they were doing regenerative work, which, like many of you out there, in my frustration with a seeming political and cultural inability to do anything about climate change, not to mention, the practical obstacles doing anything about it presents. I was very frustrated, and I came here and somebody said, go watch Alan Savory's TEDx talk. And it blew my mind. And so they're practicing regenerative work here, which I think is critical, not only for the health of the planet and the health of our environment and animals and biodiversity, but also for the health of people. I think lots of literature is emerging, or slowly scientific research is emerging that can demonstrate and will demonstrate conclusively over the years that regeneratively farmed products and foods are better for people and their health. And not just physical health, but also psychological health. And anybody listening probably knows about, 40% of their friends are on some kind of psychiatric meds or struggling with mental health issues or physical health issues. And so I think this is really important. And you asked me what gets me out of bed in the morning. I love selling organic dairy. I like marketing work. I find it challenging, but the impact of that work in terms of saving people's health and the planet and the environment is what really drives me.
Oh, I love it. Because I'm a marketer myself, and I feel like a lot of times we get a bad rap, as the spin doctors or whatever, and in a lot of ways, especially in the regenerative movement, it's one of the biggest needs that we have in being able to help us to grow into a more regenerative economy and provide jobs and livelihoods that allow us to feel like we're doing some type of good in the world, right? And a lot of that is being able to get that message out there, market the products and services that are we're supporting regenerative ag and so I totally agree with you there.
The work you and your audience is doing is really important. I contacted via email about 3,500 regenerative farms across the country, and I was stunned by the number that had gone under, right, and gone out of business. They had sort of beautiful little missions, but being a farmer and making money on in commodities is extremely difficult, if not impossible. Right. You can't sell a carrot as a carrot when the carrots the other guys are producing are, a third your cost. And they've got massive economies of scale to bear you. You have to tell your story. And it has to be a powerful story that differentiates you between what you're doing and what they're doing. And if it doesn't, consumers can't understand the difference. And marketing can make a big difference for lots and lots of regenerative and grass-fed farmers, whether they're doing dairy or beef or produce and other things.
So, and that's your role at Kelowna Supernaturals, right? That's
yes. I'm the marketing director.
You're the marketing director, and take us through the work that you're doing to build out a regenerative brand, and what that entails as you've kind of taken that on and taken that responsibility of taking the brand to, and the narrative of regenerative dairy in your area.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is to understand what the company is and how it's very unique. We were founded in 2004 by a group of Amish farmers who were getting crushed in the milk market. There was lots of cheap milk flooding in. Big dairies did not want to drive trucks down to buy from small farms. Our average herd size is about 35. We get our milk from about 60 different small family farms. Average size herd of 35 versus, big corporate dairies that go up to 15,000 cows. Mm-hmm. Down in Texas recently, a barn exploded and killed 10,000 in one shot. So the big companies just didn't want to do that. They didn't want to come pick up our milk. So the farmers decided we'll get together and build a bottling plant. Well, that's just the start. It's a pretty technological, it's a technology focused business. For those of you that don't know the Amish, they don't even most of them do not use electricity except for diesel engines to keep their milk cool. They don't have phones, except if they do, they have to be 100 yards from the house in little small buildings. They typically 5-6 families will share a line. They still use horse and buggies because they want to slow down. And so running a bottling plant was really hard. And on top of that, everything was changing from the days when a grocery store manager could kind of bring in what they want. Now big chains, some of them bought out by big companies with the name A that start with an A, consult the data down to the penny. And there's far less flexibility and freedom. But even back then it was hard for them to do marketing and sales and brand development. So they partnered with a neighbor, an quote English neighbor, an entrepreneur named Bill Evans, who owns our company. And then he did something really ingenious. Most small dairies and creameries like ours, they never grow. They kind of serve regionally. They stumble along. The kids, want to go to the big city and leave. And so they typically, they'll go under after a few years, or they'll just get crushed. Mm-hmm. Many people remember how during COVID, a lot of dairies couldn't get their milk picked up. And probably people have heard a lot about how big companies have, stopped buying milk from small farms up in the Northeast, and a lot of dairy farms went under. So that would have happened to us, except our owner decided to just bring in, he's not a type A, I know all the answers kind of guy. He really opened up and started bringing in people who would develop a series of companies around the original creamery to protect the business. Mm-hmm. So for example, milk supply goes up and milk supply goes like this while demand goes up and down. So we built a milk brokerage business where if we had too much milk, we could sell it on the market. Some other dairies actually get some of our grass-fed, 100% grass-fed milk. Can't talk about it, but we're a net positive for the industry that way. We also started a bulk organic dairy ingredient company. So small manufacturers that needed stuff could buy from us. We also started a trucking company because if we had depended on an outside trucking company and something like COVID happened or the rates went up or whatever, we could get killed. We started our own distribution company that would run around Iowa and deliver our products to stores. And then the final thing we've done, which is we're touching on, is we started a nonprofit called the Kelowna Regenerative Network to share some of our experiences in regenerative farming with other people. But all of those companies surrounded this little dairy company. Mm-hmm. And so it buffered it from big companies. Even when we have an amazing cottage cheese. It took us years to get our plant to get it right, and it really reinvented the category, from being some slimy garbage to really clean ingredient stuff. Well, along came some very clever entrepreneurs, and they saw ours, and they said, we can do this. So they went and basically, found the recipe and found our plant. We were co-packing with somebody, and then raised $20 million and then $60 million to buy shelf space across the country and take off. And our cottage cheese sales started to go down. So we're thriving now. Our cottage cheese sales are way up, because there's something about our authenticity that allows us to compete in a way, even with the biggest, coolest companies with the slickest amount of marketing and packaging, and storytelling you can imagine. So take heart, little guys. The first thing though is protect yourself. Protect yourself if you can, through diversification and vertical integration.
Mm-hmm. And that in itself is a story for you that you can then use to promote the brand. To we are this little company, but we were able to survive through all of these challenges and situations and that come up. And that builds the brand, builds the narrative as you're able to tell it.
Yep. 55 small family farms that use organic regenerative practices, and then minimally processed, almost raw organic dairy, where we don't destroy it through heavy processing and mechanical means, right? It's the picture of the beautiful pasture and the cows munching happily.
and it really is that, right? It's not the greenwashing of that image that we see in a lot of the normal or the bigger box dairy companies.
Mm-hmm. So that's where we started as a company and how we managed to protect ourselves. Then the second part might be, how we market ourselves and tell our story. And then the third is, really how we're trying to figure out, ahead of where the consumers are, how we talk about regenerative work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we can dive into this, but I also want to dive into your story as a regenerative business builder, and where it kind of all started, so that others can get a sense of the path that you've taken to get to where you are. And you shared a little bit about Kelowna and the business story and kind of how it came to be. But take us back to what started you on your journey, why you ended up here doing the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I was born in 1972 on leap year at a very young age. And, sort of woke up and found myself in Washington State, up in the mountains, beautiful Methow Valley, where we had a wood stove. There were 5 kids at the time. We were growing into 7 kids. We had tons of chickens and ducks, goats. When I was little, I used to pray every night for a horse. I finally got one. It was an old nag named Princess. It would rub me off every time I jumped on her back. Then I grew up mostly 5th grade through high school in central Illinois, associated with a small Mennonite Christian commune or community, intentional community, where we did farming. And frankly, it was boring. I didn't like it. I spent hours in weeding tomatoes, and I hated it. And as soon as I got a chance, my parents got divorced. We moved to the big city. And I ran away and fled, and somehow, based on partially on that story and not having television, because I read books all the time, I got into Yale back in 1990. I looked like I might fit in, but I was a fish out of water. It was pretty difficult experience. And since then, I can guarantee you an Ivy League degree is no guarantee of success or happiness necessarily. After college, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I found myself in the AmeriCorps National Service Program. I would have liked to do Peace Corps, but I couldn't because of my spouse. She was in medical school. And I worked in nonprofit work in San Diego for 10 years. Along the way, I was supposed to be on The Apprentice season 3. We adopted a couple of kids out of the county of San Diego. And I ended up then moving to Philadelphia, becoming an Eagles fan, go Birds, and learning, doing a lot of technology in marketing consulting, all the way through Black Hat World to I had an office in Pakistan with 40 students running spam campaigns, Hotmail accounts.
Oh wow!
It was the days, yeah.
Man.
Well, it was blown up, and there's a Zero Dark 30, the Zero Dark 6, the hunt for Bin Laden. Their bomb blew up across the street and took out our office. In that 10-year span, when I was consulting, I did work for real estate and financial service companies. 30% of our economy goes through the financial services world, and it's basically pusher paping and complexity designed to take money out of people's pockets and put it in the hands of the paper pushers. And I didn't like that. And I know, and we're in a pretty, my wife's a doctor working nonstop, sort of. Your suburban viewers, affluent suburban viewers, will resonate with this in a very stressed out kind of affluent, lifestyle where your kids are in club sports all the time. They, kind of get what they want. It's not a very healthy environment in a lot of ways, I don't think, even though they're in great schools, et cetera. It's not as real. And I knew that because I'd grown up on a farm and I'd grown up very differently, connected into a small community. And so when we moved to Iowa City, I sort of rejected all that. I decided I'm not gonna go work for 6 figures plus selling financial services software or doing this kind of consulting for these guys anymore. I want to find something that I really believe in and can be passionate about. And of course, those things for all of us usually come out of something we're struggling with. So we were struggling with our own families and kids, sort of health issues, mental health issues. I don't know. I'm old, I'm getting out of shape. I was a Dr. Pepper addict for years, and time's weighing on me. So when I came across this ad for this interesting organic dairy company that had these different businesses, I thought, this is fascinating. And honestly, I wasn't a true believer. I was just, my family members were, my wife was, but I was still eating Doritos, and fast food. But I was sick, I wasn't doing well. And then when I decided to take a shot at not only this company, but a little bit different way of life, and investing in something different. And then that's when I also discovered regenerative agriculture, which not only made a lot of sense to me, both from a scientific perspective and a values perspective, and sort of the hope it gave me for my own health and other people's health, but also for the planet. Everybody knows how polarized politically everything is and how hard it is to get done. And the idea that we're going to develop wind scrubbers to suck the carbon out of the atmosphere is kind of ridiculous when we should work with nature and have more cows.
Yeah.
So that's how I got here.
Well, and it's a really cool experience. And I think for a lot of us coming into and finding out about regeneration, I came into it through permaculture. If you've run into that, right? And gardening. And it was more, and even before that, it's natural building. And it was wanting to do something different because I was seeing how the world was in a way that I didn't want it to be. Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of us kind of come in, whatever reasons that we kind of live through in this world, and we're seeing how just out of touch we are with nature, with our own selves and with community. And I think that's a common thread that a lot of us can find and resonate with each other. And then also when people are coming in to be involved in regenerative enterprises, I think that's also another, like, we get that we want our work to be more fulfilling. We can't just keep on doing business as usual. And we step into finding ways that we can not only kind of live a certain lifestyle, but also to perpetuate it, to change the systems that we currently have. So I see those commonalities, but I also see some of just the really fun pieces. Like you went to Ivy League and then you lived on a farm, went to Ivy League and then came back to
full circle,
full circle, coming back in marketing for a farmers and regenerative brand, right? So
and here's the fascinating recent piece. This small Mennonite Christian community that owned a farm, a 175 acre farm in central Illinois. failed after a while. It was a kind of a Christian socialist experiment that didn't work beyond its 15 years or whatever. And a nonprofit took it over called Hungry World Farm. And the nonprofit is focused on inspiring and educating people about regenerative agriculture.
Whoa.
So I've been down there a lot, joined the board. I do enough work here with the farmers, but down there, I mean, chickens and ducks and goats and produce and all the other things on the board. I'm not only helping them sort of on the business side, but on the marketing side, and I can get my hands dirty on agritourism and Airbnbs and everything else. So I've really come full circle. And here's another thing.
So it's such a small world. Yeah.
What you said too about, you're discovering this, my parents were out of the 60s and the whole organic movement was sort of a hippie, very left-wing, I'd call it left-wing if we're going to label stuff, counterculture movement to the sort of the conservativeness of the 50s. You're young, you don't remember all this. But what's going on now is fascinating. I mean, the regenerative movement has all kinds of elements from those same, sort of liberal environmentalists, who are pro big government regulation in many ways. And then you have homesteader, very conservative, sort of conservative Christian homesteader types. And then, cattlemen ranchers sort of torn between, conventional cattle ranching with vaccines and everything, and who are probably a little more conservative in nature, politically, certainly. So we're getting a very interesting cross section of real polar opposites in terms of politics, culture, income level, religion, all finding space in the regenerative and coming into this regenerative movement, and we're seeing interesting coalitions of people come together. It's really refreshing given what else is going on in the world.
Well, I think your story signifies that, that as well. Like you can be almost in any industry and doing whatever, and then all of a sudden you're brought into an understanding of regenerative systems design or regenerative agriculture or the health benefits of eating this way or that, and it is it clicks for everybody. It's not just for the hippies. It's not just for the homesteaders, the people that are like the preppers or whatever that think it's the end of times or it is end of times stuff, right? And and it's even for it's for the greater majority, whatever extreme or whatever center you are, right? You kind of fit in, and I think a lot of us don't. I think we're realizing more and more. Maybe Sammy, you can talk to this as well. Is like it's not about the political stance. It's not about the belief structure. It's about what we really want to see happen. What really truly matters to us, our family, our health, and that's what we're organizing around, right? And there's principles that are in the regenerative movement and regenerative agriculture and even regenerative systems design that is actually able for us to bridge those gaps and to not be divisive in this space, but to be collaborative in this space.
Yeah, I found I went through the Savory Institute's accredited professional training on holistic management, and I've been through lots of business development stuff, business consulting, looking at people's operations and things, and I just found it to be fascinating. There's a real scientific component to regenerative. And I know that science works. My wife's a doctor. I can, when I'll say something stupid about, this and that, and she can describe in great detail, in minute detail about how physiological systems work and why that's not what I just said isn't true, based on science. But science can also be very reductionist, right? And we talk about this a lot in the regenerative space. What may be happening on one piece of property has no relation to what may happen on the piece of property across the way. What we really need to look at are the systems in wholes and in total, and approach it with some humility about, 1 teaspoon of soil creates 9 billion bacteria or something, and we understand about what 100 of them do. So, on one hand, science is important. On the other hand, we need to approach with some humility and realize we don't know a lot of what is going on, both from an environmental perspective and also from sort of a health and physiological perspective. My goofy mom, rest her soul, 15 years ago, who was always off on some crazy wacko kick, she was on to supraluminalgia. And then next thing she was talking about gut health. And this was 15, 20 years ago. Like, oh, and I'm going, what? This is stupid. Now, years later, it's a real thing, and it actually is really real. And science is, catching up with what it is. So that's one thing, sort of the reductionist science versus seeing things in wholes.
Yeah, I would say even our modern science view still really stems from our industrial view as well, where we reduce everything to its simplest form so that we can solve for one variable of it instead of multiple variables, at which that's not how the world works. That's not how nature works. And that's a lot of the problems that we have with business and entrepreneurship in general, is you have a business that's solving for one problem, but neglecting all the other systems that are at play, and creates so many other problems, because sure, they solved for, let's get rural America to have all the widgets and all the products and services in the world through a Walmart, but then they forgot about all the other challenges that happened in and were created in doing so. Right? Exactly. I'm not poo-pooing Sam Walton or any other entrepreneur that creates some solution for the market, but it's the view that we've had, and science has had that same view for a very long time as well, which I think is starting to come full circle, because we're more aware than we've ever been about systems and different things and the correlations, and we're noticing that really everything is connected, right? Yeah. And so we really have a more holistic view in a lot of ways than we did in the past. And so I think we it's prime time for us to be able to experience and move towards a more holistic way of living, of farming, of doing the doing things in accordance to nature, rather than trying to create our own system and our own nature in itself.
Things happen, things like mechanical things happen in a linear way. You do X, then X bumps into Y, and then that makes Z happen in a very linear way. But yeah, that's not how nature works. Nature is much more complex, and it's really hard to predict, whether it's in your family system or you're on your farm, or in your health, in your body, what one thing is going to do and how it's going to react with a ton of other things. It's very, very difficult. Alan Savory talks about observing and adjusting. The ultimate scientific method is really to observe what is happening. Look at the land, look at how many plants and how many bugs are per square foot, do something, and then adjust. Not, look for the same regurgitated study that doesn't have any relationship in terms of its context to what you're trying to do on your land with your grasses and your bugs and animals. So yeah, I think, observing and adjusting, keeping in mind your context, your vision to where you want your family or business to go is critical. We know shiny object syndrome, in marketing, yeah. Your business is struggling and you just go, I'm going to get that thing and that thing's going to solve it. But it doesn't really necessarily do that.
No. And we often try to use these stamp and repeat solutions in marketing and business, yep, and on our own businesses to create the impact that we want, but we're neglecting the observation of, this is not how the system works. It's not natural. What are the inherent systems that exist? Can we use those to work alongside them rather than? So there's a thread here that I want to kind of maybe backtrack a little bit and talk about, because I'm noticing that you have just a great understanding of regenerative agriculture, of regenerative systems, and it's coming from your desire to really help that movement flourish, right?
Yes.
And you had to learn this somehow, right? And I want to compare it to like the way that you've gone about learning. Has it changed, or learning these concepts and applying them? Excuse me, 1 second. I'm recovering from a cold, and I have this wheeze that wants to trigger a cough. So the question that I have for you is, like, you went to, it was Yale, right? If I'm not mistaken. You went to Yale, you had that type of education, but before that, you had the education on the farm, an understanding of from nature, right? And gain that. And then kind of coming into where you're at right now, where you're marketing a regenerative brand and you're working with regenerative farmers. How has your process of understanding and teaching yourself and educating yourself changed over the years, from, when you were a kid learning, going to school, and then going to Yale, and then now having to learn some of these things to help these regenerative farmers?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Now you make me think about it. When you're a kid, you just kind of do what you're told, and you kind of hate it. Lots of farm kids have the experience of working with their dads who are like, just do this. They're not very good teachers. Just do this. And then you start screwing it up, and they just come in and they fix it. And so you don't learn that much necessarily. Even as you're getting really grounded into the land, your whole psyche is connected into the soil and the land. Then you go off to college, and you like most smart young people think you know everything. And why don't everything? The old stuff is like out the door, right? I know how to do this. Why the injustices in the world? You want to fight everything. But somewhere along there, because I think I went to a public school that was just fine. I was a smart kid, but I don't know that I had wonderful education. And I was competing with kids. Probably, I'd say 50% of the student body was from very affluent, private school, super trained, affluent kids, really well educated. The other 50%, contrary to popular belief, probably of the Ivy Towers, was a bunch of weirdos like me. They were really brilliant at something, or they had really interesting challenges in their life story. Ivy Leagues generally look for a really diverse, interesting student body to bring in different experiences. It's not just, the old alumni rich kids. But I couldn't compete with these kids. I hadn't read the classics. I hadn't been trained like they were on anything. And so what it pushed me to was being less of a bullshit artist, frankly, and a little more grounded. And I couldn't compete with how they wrote. So I learned how to write. A did B and B did C. And ironically, as soon as I did that, I got A's. And so I think what I've always been doing, I had a class, Edward Tufte, who's probably the information systems design genius out there. Edward Tufte, if you look him up, how he presents design information visually, absolutely fascinating. And he said to me, you just keep asking why. In a lot of scenarios, you just keep asking why. Well, why is that? Answer, well, why is that? And you kind of cut through all the noise and all the insanity and get to the bottom of what's really going on. And I think that process serves me really well now, and it serves all farmers now, right? You're constantly watching what's happening, and observing and saying, well, why? And what can I do? And why? And what can I do? Rather than taking deep dives necessarily into I'm going to say it this way, lots of corporate science or whatever that's pretty much props up the existing corporate take on food and everything else. Did I say it that way?
Yeah. I think that's a perfect way to say it, right?
We're nice organic people. We're not supposed to be harsh, but And I understand. I mean, I friends who farmers, live in farming communities, and so I understand why, chemical weapons materials turned into, fertilizer and things to put in our fields. And prompted the green revolution. So I understand all that. I understand how people are wedded to, the tractors and the debt and the ever increasing, synthetic inputs to get higher yields. And there are people are starving. I mean, people are trying to survive. I don't have any grudge against that. But to break that cycle, we have to look at it. We have to look at things from a different perspective. What's sustainable long term? How do we invest in our land and our families differently to preserve our community? The Amish are really smart about this. You go to any farming conference and you ask a room of 100 farmers how many kids are going to go in the family business, and maybe one or two will raise their hand. That's not true for the Amish farmers. I'll give you an example. We were talking about dairy farming, and dairy farming is tough like anything else. And one guy pipes up and says, why don't I just get rid of my dairy cows and plant corn and beans? Organic. They're all organic, organic corn and beans. And somebody looked at him and said, really? What would your kids do? And this started a really big discussion of about 50 people about what was really important to them. And while most people would never want to tie themselves to dairy cows and milking twice a day, they really saw it as a chance to spend time together and have these, traditions over generations together. And that what was the most important thing to them was their faith and their family and community. It wasn't making an extra 40,000 or 20,000 bucks a year to what? Buy a more expensive car, or in their case, a fancier buggy. It didn't mean that much to them. And many of us are trapped in that cycle, either going to get more, distorting our lives and what's important and the environment to get more, or just barely hanging on by the skin of our teeth while the big corporations and systems run roughshod over everybody on the right and the left side of the spectrum, political spectrum, who don't have very much money. Poverty deserts in cities are real. There's no healthy food in many, food deserts in cities where the only access poor people have to food is the dollar store, which is selling manufactured garbage that's killing them and their kids. It's kind of like, cities segregated and slum landlords took over and used lead paint and, damaged people's brains through racial segregation. It's just awful. It's still going on, just a little bit different.
It's a similar pattern that's kind of existing, and we're needing to disrupt, and this is a solution that we're working on to do that. Right.
Sorry, you started preaching a little bit there.
No, it's helpful for us as we want to be excited about the work that we're doing and why we're doing it. Right.
We better be. We're in an absolute fight with people with billions and billions of dollars and competing with garbage, which is engineered to deliver dopamine hits every split second. And and then you take your kid to a farm and they go, "Oh, this is boring,"
or they don't even know where their food comes from, so we have to get excited about these things. We have to be able to transfer that enthusiasm into the work that we're doing. Tell us, as you've developed, and I think it was really cool to kind of see that progression and really getting to a point where you just always ask why, right? Understanding it, observing what's around you, and letting that be your guide for what you need to learn, what you need to develop to be able to help the business that you're in, the farmers that you're working with. If you can help us kind of relate that back to your approach to marketing and how you are developing the story for Kelowna and all the products that you guys are building there.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The first thing is that when I landed here, my marketing budget, it would blow some companies' minds. How little I have in some ways, and in some ways that was a blessing, because the first thing I did was go it looks like we're trying to copy, social media marketing world strategy. Somebody went to a conference and we're spread out doing all these things, but don't quite know why and aren't quite grounded. And then the truth is too, that with Amish farmers not being able to be on camera, boy, is that a challenge. They don't want to, it's something out of the Bible, make no graven images, that they don't want to be in photos, really be in photos. They allow it sometimes, but they don't want to be spotlighted as the heroes in our marketing. We're competing with companies that, say developed by doctors and have lots of, stuff like that on their labels, or they've got beautiful, it kills me, the most beautiful pictures of farms and kids with their cows on their packaging. Meanwhile, I've got this little tiny, little label here rather than a big carton. And I'm going, how can we possibly compete here? So we had to just slow down. And I think, the question of why that you want me to tie it into, if you ask me to tie it into, is really important. So I'll say we took a particular kind of strategy, a differentiation kind of strategy, pounding how we're different. We've done that. But here's the why question. So, we let it be the customer's why. We're USDA certified organic, 100% or almost all grass-fed, low temp pasteurized, that's pasteurized lowest temperature allowed by law, as opposed to heavily sterilized. We're non-homogenized milk, which has a cream top, which floats to the top naturally, which plugs up the bottle and is a challenge. Clean ingredients. Some people hate vaccines. They hate government regulations. Other people, are focused on cow health. And really, we let them tell us who we are for them. And we appreciate what they do for what their perspective is. There's a lot of marketing will tell you, pick your thing and pound it. And we've done that. We have done that. And, but on the flip side, we've just, sort of resonated with and respected and appreciated whatever anybody's thing is. So I'll give you the toughest example, or the hottest example right now is vaccines, right? Animal vaccines. When COVID happened, the use of vaccines became highly political and polarized for people. And then, of course, that bled over to animal health and welfare. Well, most dairy farmers will tell you for years that, you've got to give your animals vaccines. We feel that's in many cases because they're in very unhealthy conditions in large corporate farms. They certainly are high stress environments. But then, even smaller guys would argue, look, if I don't give them vaccines and they get sick, the animal suffers and you got to put them down. And we're preventing animal suffering. So there's there's that perspective. The other perspective is, why aren't we farming in a way that is natural enough for the animals to be very healthy? And the corporate science stuff on this, African American folks are very suspicious of the kind of scientific studies and crap that was used on them, back in the 50s. So. And other people for sort of on the right side of the political spectrum are very, very skeptical that these things are helpful. In fact, are damaging. Vaccine will leak into your body. It'll poison you. It'll distort your DNA. So those are very different. Those are very different kind of perspectives. And I may have my own personal perspective on this. But I think we listen to the people because the customer is reflecting something very real for them, right? They're scared. They're angry. They're desperate for their health. A lot of our world is totally out of control. And so the first thing we do is just, respect their opinion. And if they, in our conversations, focus on vaccines, we'll talk about that. If they're really passionate about grass-fed, we'll focus on grass-fed. And focus on that kind of thing that means something to them. all the while just respecting them and their whatever journey they're on. We got enough people being angry at each other and getting disgusted with each other, for us to be doing that too, it would be practically criminal.
Well, and I enjoyed just kind of looking at your packaging and the marketing that you have around it and the message that you have, it organic plus, right? And then you have these pluses that you have around it, which is great. It hits different people in different ways when you say plus grass fed, which is protecting, which is health for the cow, or you have plus regenerative product because it's better for the earth, right? And there's people have different concerns, and you're addressing those. And you went down and got down to the why of these concerns. Why do people have this concern? And that, to me, is a really strong way to go about your marketing, right? Obviously, there's the tactics and techniques and whatnot, but really truly understanding your clients, your customers is really where most of the work is done in marketing and branding.
I'll give you the practical secret. If you like one of our posts or comment on it, or maybe even like another post on say a carnivore, Dr. Carnivore's feed, you might get a direct message from us saying, we saw that you like this and you care about this issue. What about these things that we do might be most important to you on whatever journey you're on? And then we take the time to talk to them. And invest in educating or having a conversation, making them feel like they're part of our community, which they are, making feel like we're in community and relationship with them and care about them. And we really do. Even, it's through social media, but it's amazing. It's amazing what happens when you take the time to reach out. Zappos is the famous, corporate story, right? They gave their customer service reps permission to sit on the phone for 45 minutes discussing shoes. And we do a lot of that in a very similar way through different mediums other than the telephone, probably. Telephone calls are tough. 45 minutes with, some older folks, who just need somebody to talk to is a strain, because we don't have, we have money budget. We're a tiny team. But we take that responsibility, we take our responsibility for delivering a high quality product that's good for the environment and small farms really seriously.
Well, and understand.
And we think to be responsible, we have those conversations with people and help them on whatever journey they're on.
Well, there's this, there is a thing that's starting to come up, and it's regenerative marketing, right?
Yeah.
It's starting to become a thing, and I'm glad it is. There's I thought it was just me that was saying that for a little while. How can we make marketing more regenerative? But I think a huge part of that is the if you look at the permaculture principles, right?
Yeah,
and you look at the principle of allow for feedback, right? That's exactly what we're trying to implement in our business, right? And if we're regeneratively designing our business, you have to have open feedback, right? It has to be a feedback loop it's continuous, but also like right when you need it, right? Because if you lose that, and I think a lot of businesses, they can go down the route of the clickbait stuff, or they can go down the route of trying to figure out a numbers game to where if they say something this way or have this button somewhere here, that it's going to get more people doing whatever they want, their desired outcome, right? Making a purchase.
For sure.
But what we miss out on is that open feedback, getting actually really truly why that is, why if someone is really truly engaged in your brand, that they would click on this rather than that, really understanding why that is by actually going out and talking to that person, right? Getting to know them, getting to know them so well that that you know their challenge almost better than they know it themselves. And to me, that is the way that we can move away from this kind of clickbait marketing, business as usual type of world into a more caring, understanding marketing, where we actually go out and we talk to our clients. We specifically make sure that those that are actually speaking out and saying something, messaging or commenting or liking a certain post or whatever, that we take the time to really understand why that is, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that we can go back in and say, this is of value to them. Why is that of value to them? And then start to, it changes the way our product looks. It changes the way everything, the business runs, all sorts of different things if we can market in that type of way.
There's a great book called The Outward Mindset by the Arbinger Institute. They've been famous, I'm going to say mediators in some way for Palestinian Israeli stuff. They have a book called Outward Mindset, and then another one called Thinking Outside the Box. But for corporate cultures, the idea is to not just think about yourself all the time and your perspective, but to really put yourself in the other department's shoes and in a collaborative kind of way. Mm-hmm. And we've read that, and I a while back, and I thought, we listen to our customers, but we can do an even better job of that. So when somebody calls us or emails us with an issue, it's like, oh, here we go again. I'm being irritated. It's stopping that and saying, what might they be going through? And I need to listen to them. This is hard because it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resource, and you won't see that. You go say, we're going to spend 15 minutes with one person, and if you budget that out, it doesn't make sense in most corporate, spreadsheets or plans. You've got to hit numbers. You got to hit numbers. It's all about behavior. Can I get my staff to work fast enough to do X enough things, to hit enough people? That's typically right how a lot of marketing works. The Arbinger Institute just makes this point really well, that what you have to do is change your attitude. Mm-hmm. And if you let your people have the right attitude and act with this sort of outward mindset, it will come back. And it has for us. We've had lots of people will pay influencers, $1,000 post. We get promotional packs all the time that there's no way we can afford. And we know what the other guys are doing, the big companies are doing, and we can't do that. So, but we have had relationships with some influencers from when they were small, because we sent them stuff and appreciated them and shared their stuff on our timeline, even though it didn't make a lot of sense for us in terms of like an immediate ROI. We just had this mindset. We're just going to help them. We're going to help other people. And I'll be darned, if a year later somebody blows up, I give you 3 or 4 names, and they've got 70,000 followers now, and then the 150,000 jump into 500,000, and and there they are talking about our products because we supported them and we're real.
And they believe in what you're doing.
Pay off long term, right? It's the same way as slowing down and doing cover cropping and putting roots in the soil and not using herbicides and pesticides. You won't immediately have the yield you need or want, maybe, or see the immediate impact. But man, if you can stick with it, it'll pay off. Or like if your kid's annoying the crap out of you, they're just discipline them and try to make them do whatever, or whatever. Or you can sit and listen to them, really stop and see them and hear them, which is hard when you're trying to get your kids to do stuff and get it done.
It takes longer.
Be successful and not make the same mistakes you made. But if you can listen and see them, really great things will come out of it. It's true with the land, it's true with animals, and it's true with people, I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a principle that lives beyond just what we're talking about here in marketing or you look at, I think there's also ways that we can also be smarter in that in our approaches. And if we are feeling that constraint or have that constraint of, I can't talk to everybody, how do I go out there and I get the information that I need to be able to understand my audience, my and be able to build the relationships with micro influencers out there that can help us build up the brand. I think it's understanding what the biggest principles are, and and understanding the things that carry the most weight. For example, like when you're talking to these influencers, or you're talking to a specific client or customer to gain a better understanding of them, you're really focusing on a certain type of person that is able to engage. You mentioned someone engages with your stuff first before. You're not just going out and reaching out to every customer. It's these types of customers that are resonating with your message, understanding, expressing some type of understanding themselves about why they're engaging with your brand, right? And then you go out and reach out to them. And for us in our business, we consider that a maven, right? If you're going to reach out to someone, a client or an influencer, anybody that is going to be impactful for you to understand your audience, it's this certain type of person. It's a maven. It's someone that that's highly responsive to your message, highly responsive and highly understanding of the challenge that they're facing, and they can talk to it and understand it. They may not know how to solve the problem, but they have done their due diligence. They understand what it is that they're trying to solve, and they can articulate it. And if you can talk with that person, they're going to give you all sorts of knowledge and understanding that you could use to better serve your client, rather than just going out to everybody and starting to talk to all your clients all at once, or sending out a sales team to do something like that, right? It's really trying to figure out what's the ideal person that's going to move the needle. And Malcolm Gladwell's book is a really good example of this. A maven in his book Tipping Point, he lists the different types of people that kind of take you from not no one really understanding who you are, and then getting that tipping point to where people really do understand who you are, what you're doing, and everybody understands. And there's a few types of people that make that happen. It's the 80-20 rule. What's the 20% of the people that are really making the big difference in your population? And they will represent actually the rest of the 80%. They're just saying things that are in the heads that they're not actually saying themselves, but a lot of those other people truly do believe in, right? So you got to really understand and get the understanding from the right people at the right time.
Yeah, a year ago we had 6,500 followers on Instagram. We're about to hit 20,000, and it was simply because we weren't going to buy them, any of that fake stuff. So I was like, I don't know what to do here, guys, other than if we get every customer to tell 2 other customers, our growth is explosive, And the only way to do that is to talk to them. We can't do demos in stores all the time. So we'll talk to them through social media. And so we did. And that's, I can't give you our sales figures, but they're really, really good year over year for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, and it's been good to get a better understanding and to really kind of dive into how you kind of come into this path and really truly want to serve and help build the narrative for regenerative agriculture, regenerative ranching. Help us now, I guess, towards the end of this conversation. Let's talk about what you would hope the entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast and business builders in this regenerative space. What would you hope them to get out of your story that you've shared with us today?
Well, I think first of all, sticking with it. Yes, if you're going to fail at something, fail fast. But we know lots of entrepreneurs who are full of passion and energy, and just blow out of the gate. But it's passion and energy. It's not management skill. It's not the ability to stick in. Many entrepreneurs are a little ADHD, and so sticking in and grinding in is important. And surrounding yourself with people who have different kinds of complementary skills and leadership, and knowing how to respect that's real important. Look up a book called Lemon Leadership. You can't just have a visionary. You need a management type, entrepreneur type, networker. There's different organizer, people that hate meetings and want to get stuff done. You need different people around you that complement you that way. for sure, especially with entrepreneurs. Eventually, you need systems at some point. That's first thing. The second thing I think, like we've been talking about, is to approach it from a sort of a values perspective. If you are values based, and then you have to hit numbers in a certain amount of time, right? You have to be efficient. You have to work fast and hard. That is pushing and difficult. If you're real values based, if you do care about people inside of all that, that's going to come through, as opposed to not really caring about people and just pushing the numbers. It will come through. People can sense that internally, and your customers can sense that too. And then I think, for regenerative work, there are only so many people that care about the environment. I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve. We were so ahead of the curve, right? Everybody else put stickers, just like the seals on their products. Ours are land to market verified by the Savory Institute's certification verification program. And you can see here, there's the seal, but then we took this massive chunk out of our label to explain what it was. Proves that our land to market proves that we have data basically that we're restoring biodiversity, sequestering carbon, increasing watershed quality, et cetera, et cetera. But we took that time because we needed to educate them. So I think it's hard. I think our movement will take off. I think from my experience, our movement will take off when women ages 25 to 55 connect soil health to gut health. Wow, and see regenerative farming as a way of producing high quality food that impacts the things that are most important to them, which are their physical and mental health, and their children's physical and mental health. That's what I think will take us to the next level. And the Bionutrient Association just did a big post, at least on LinkedIn, about a lot of the studies they're doing, both on looking at different ways that produce, vegetables and things are grown, and also the way beef is farmed. We already had indications of that, like What Your Food Ate by David Montgomery and his wife is a great book on sort of the quality of how food is different when it's regeneratively farmed. But I think that information's coming, and some of us are going to have to push the envelope a little bit, on what we're saying to get people to pay attention for that. There are all kinds of people making up all kinds of claims constantly with dubious experience levels on social media constantly. And I don't say do that necessarily, but we've got to pound this point, that your kids are eating garbage, and we're eating garbage every day, and it's having a horrible physical and psychological and psychiatric, effect on us.
So for regenerative entrepreneurs, especially those that are in regenerative food products, and building food brands, would you say that's like one of the biggest points that we could be pushing is the association between soil health and gut health? Yep. And how would you say maybe some points on how we can possibly convey that to others in ways that we're not judging, or we're not that we're actually just being helpful?
Yeah, it's tough. We can say a carrot is not a carrot, and then try to dig into the whatever scientific facts we have on that. I think that's one way to do it. The other way, we get a lot of stories, right? We get stories in Messenger and things where people will say, things like, I was eating X and now I'm eating your milk, or eating your cottage cheese or whatever. And they talk about the dramatic way that that's impacted them. And so we share those stories. And then we have to tell people to try it and see how you feel, in a sort of holistic way that we've been talking about. I think those three things are important. I was trained, so I'm dying for the science to come out beyond this stuff. Diane Rogers, I think she puts out a lot of really good stuff on how high nutrient meat is a very nutrient dense food in a lot of ways. She does some really good work on there. I would probably disagree with her on, I think regenerative and grass-fed beef is superior to grain-fed beef. David Montgomery's book, he talks about how the omega-6 and omega-3 ratios are so important. People say, oh, higher, better ratios, but nobody knows what that means. And in his book, they described studies that started to show that when you have a really high different or really imbalanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s, whether that's from eating manufactured garbage or conventionally farmed vegetables or grain-fed beef, you've got this buildup of omega-6s in your body. And when COVID hit us, our inflammatory response kicked in, and what it feeds on, the omega-6s. And so people's systems would rev up, and normally it would, in a natural state, it would subside down because you have relatively balances between the two. But in this case, we had so much omega-6 imbalance from all the crap we've been eating, it just spun up and kept going. And that's partially why so many people got sick, and died who were very unhealthy. Food is medicine is a good concept. And the people that were, they were hating on vaccines and everything. They weren't entirely wrong when they said, a healthy diet is really important to not getting sick and dying from this stuff. They were absolutely right. And now there are lots of complicated factors on that on top of that, but that is a key principle for sure.
Yeah. Well, and being able to convey that, I think, like you mentioned, just like, here's what we understand. Here's try it out and engage with it in your life, and here's the understanding. I think we are getting greater and greater knowledge around that, and I'm glad that you pointed out the Bionutrient Food Association, because we had Dan Kittredge on the podcast not too long ago. I'm not sure when his episode's actually going to drop, if it's going to drop before yours or
best tune in.
Yeah. So good. I mean, that type of knowledge is coming, right? Like we're waiting for that type of understanding of like really how much bionutrients is in this particular food compared to this food, and can we really show that grass-fed beef and grass-fed cows are healthier and produce better produce and products, and I think that's coming. But what we do know about soil health is that it is something that is better for our planet and long term is able to create the type of produce that we need to be able to survive in general. And if we don't focus in on that type of understanding and that type of building up our soil health, we won't have food in general at all, because soils will be depleted. We won't be able to grow the food that we need. And if that doesn't say something about soil health, I don't know what else does, So
we have the richest topsoil in the world here in Iowa, but we lose, between 5 tons per acre every year, just washed off, and carrying lots of poisons with it usually. It's really awful. But we've got a lot of it, so we're okay. Not so in most parts of the world where desertification is happened so rapidly. People cannot grow crops, and they can't even graze animals because of poor management practices.
Well, and I think there's it definitely can be regenerated, right? And so we shouldn't give up hope or feel it's a lost cause in making these types of transitions towards soil health. But I think there is that misconception that we can't do if we only have the statistic is we have less than like 40 something
years or something. Yeah.
I think it's the actual harvest number was 50 like 7 years ago or something like that. 50 harvest left or something like that. That's crazy, right? To think about but it's with our current farming practices, right? And so we can extend that and we can turn it completely around with the same type of farming that your farmers are doing, and trying to raise and grow in a way that's actually with nature and with soil health. So I think
it's something, our farmers, a lot of farmers around here dump nitrogen on plants. When there's tons of nitrogen in the air. And so by dumping nitrogen on a plant, it's like the plant is just going, it's just like sucking it in a very lazy way. You've got a lazy plant. But when you don't do that and the plant has to pull it out of the atmosphere, then they're strong. It's like they're lifting weights. They're pulling nitrogen out of the atmosphere and end up being a lot more healthy. I think there's a lot of creative examples like that we need to get better at sharing to illustrate the complexity of it, and the science of it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of untapped ways that we can, and creative ways that we can share that understanding. So thank you for giving us these tidbits here for the audience, and I really do enjoy that big one of attaching soil health with gut health. That really hit me for those that are building businesses in this space. So any last pieces of advice and any last words that you want to share? And obviously I want to get to know how can we follow the work? Where can we pick up Kelowna Supernatural Foods? And give us more of an idea of how we can follow your journey further.
Sure. I think one thing to note is that farms can't just farm. Regenerative producers can't just produce. They've got to be educators and storytellers. So if you've got a farm where you support that farm through agritourism, and lots of kind of events where you educate people and bring them in. Remember, you're not selling a carrot. You're selling an experience. You're selling somebody investing in their values. If you're doing regenerative farmers market, don't sell your stuff for $3 when everybody's selling it for $3. Tell the story such that people will pay $6, or maybe, they can pay $4 if they join your mailing list. So that's first thing. We'd love to have you try our products and see if you like them. Kelowna Supernatural, our dairy products, we have 18 different products, from milk to cottage cheese to sour cream. Eggnog's coming out this year. Again, we have 18 different in all 50 states, in about 3,500 stores nationwide. Things like Whole Foods, Natural Grocers, Sprouts. We love Sprouts. We're trying to build in there. Our whole milk is just now making it out to Arizona and Erewhon, which is like the Hollywood Stars store. So, we're a little company, that is there because of, a very limited number of really passionate people who care about things. And, world's tough. Everybody's stressed out. But one thing you can do when you're in between feeding kids Doritos and Kraft macaroni and cheese is, pour some Kelowna Supernatural milk on it. And have one little easy way to do something good for your health and the family and the planet every day. Our website's KelownaSupernatural.com. You can also buy our stuff through Instacart.
Oh.
And if you want to volunteer or get your hands dirty, come visit us at Hungry World Farm.
Yes, that's the nonprofit, right?
Yep. Or seek out one in your local area. And I'll be the only national brand that'll probably say this, but if you can support a local regenerative farmer and get your milk from them and get your stuff from them, please do so. Please support your local food system, your neighbors, and your community.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that as well. We need those that are wanting to go raw milk and wanting to get away from the big industrial side of things. That's one of the best ways to do so, right?
We support your journey, whatever it is, for a more sort of natural way of life and diet. Absolutely.
Thank you. And Sam, if we want to reach out to you personally or follow you on social, do you have ways that we could do that? Or
I'm on LinkedIn. It's us, message us on Instagram and say, hey, I want to talk to Sam, or Facebook, or just through the website. I see everything that comes through personally.
Wonderful. Well,
whether I'm in the office or in the field.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed your story and love the work that you're doing. So please, we would love to have you again on the podcast to continue that. And,
sure.
and please stay in touch with us, and we're going to be following your journey as well. So
thank you for the conversation, and I really appreciate everybody who's listening and what you're doing to support the movement. It's really important. It's really important work and critical to our survival and the health of your neighbors. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and it really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So, what'd you think? If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies ecosystem, known as Regen B, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. Regen B also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests. Register to be a guest on the podcast and share your own Regenpreneur startup story or any other suggestion you might have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.